speaking about the different topics, I want, on behalf of all the guests here and on behalf of the INSS, to express our condolences for your son Gal. We're not going to discuss it today, but we want to express our condolences and embrace you. And now let's move on. Minister Eisenkot, what do you see as a victory over Hamas? How will it be reflected? Do we want to go beyond the slogans? Can we even define such a term, and so that every Israeli citizens will be able to feel that we defeated Hamas? So victory over Hamas is realization of the objectives of war and improving the strategic status of Israel for the long run. And to be more precise, we want to obtain what the cabinet directed the IDF to do, to bring back the hostages. And secondly, it means destroying military and regime capabilities of Hamas. And thirdly, to be able to bring people back to Gaza envelope. So obviously when you fight with the military, the definition of victory is clear. There is the government, there is state institutions, but when you fight against the terror organizations that reflect an prospect, it's way more complicated. We have a long experience fighting against terrorism, and I can tell you, based on my experience as a commander in Judea and Samaria in our struggle against terrorism, it took a long time, and I understand the desire to actually improve everybody, our spirits, but it will take a long time. And the idea of behind Hamas is something that the Egyptians have been dealing with ever since the 30s. We are fighting against terror organization for years, and we obtained great achievements alongside the realization that this phenomenon affects the national security of Israel. And I suppose that in the short term, I mean about month, we will accomplish the first stage, the intense stage of warfare, but the operation against Hamas and terror organizations will continue throughout our generation, and maybe the next generation. It's part of the price that we need to pay for our security and for being able to live here in this area. And how do you see Netanyahu's plan for the day after? Do you accept it? Who will recover the Gaza? So unfortunately, we started speaking the day after quite late. We should have done it before, writing, discussing, and we should have done it earlier, realizing that part of the victory is developing another alternative for a regime. And because we didn't try to find an alternative, then obviously the only player remained in Gaza is Hamas. So it's either Hamas or the IDF. And it means if we want to apply military occupation in Gaza, it will have a heavy price. And IDF and the entire state of Israel will be drawn into this black hole. But we need to understand that Hamas will be replaced at the interim stage, months or a couple of years from now. It will have to be replaced by a combination of 3 or 4 players. And I think that this is an American umbrella with some Egyptian and Israeli partnerships. With the same time as we destroy Hamas capabilities, we will have to develop a different alternative to Hamas. And this is the catch, because in Gaza there are people of Hamas, people of ISIS, people of Fatah, you name it. And now the choice is between very bad alternatives. In the past, the State of Israel knew how to find solutions, and the solution must be some civil commissions. We'll have to build them. We will have to develop them together with the international community based on the realization that the State of Israel decided after October 7th that it doesn't want to take direct responsibility for feeding 2 million Palestinians. It should be done, it will be done by international community, Arab community, and we must make sure that whatever was built there before October 7th will not repeat itself. And the one principle should guide us. Israel, in the foreseeable future, will have security responsibility over Gaza Strip, exactly as we've had in Judea and Samaria for many years. So after all that, we can also speak about hostages, which is the most sensitive problem. How do you how do we bring them back home? How do you do that? How do you bring them home, including the ones who are no longer alive? On October 7th, we, the State of Israel, the IDF, and the security establishment failed. It was a real fiasco. And as a result, we have today 134 hostages in Gaza. And when we joined the emergency government, we demanded that this objective will be highly prioritized, and it's one of the main objectives that were defined. I hear in the many disputes whether what is more important, defeating Hamas or bringing back the hostages, and I stated my opinion very, very clearly that bringing back the hostages is the number one top priority, and it's part of victory. Without bringing them back, if we don't bring them back, there will be no victory, no image of victory, but our national resilience of Israel will be undermined. And at the same time that we conduct political, economic, military efforts, we created conditions for their return, and some of them did return, but you need to make additional effort to bring everybody else back as soon as possible. Let me say one more thing. It's not only matters of ethics. I think it's also a strategic need in order to handle the aggregated achievement in Gaza, Lebanon, and Judea and Samaria, and even the ability. It also has to do with the ability to obtain a regional achievement and empower or strengthen the moderate axis. And when we look back a year from now, we'll be able to say that we obtained victory in a very complicated reality, in a very problematic reality of after the October 7th. We need to be humble and skeptical in terms of, we don't just want to wave slogans, but we live on that day we had a disaster, but the military, the IDF managed to recover, and now we need to focus on bringing the hostages back first of all, and after that to accomplish the rest of the objectives. How about the negotiations, which is currently going on?
Some of those things reach the media, and it's basically about connecting the dots. The moderators put a proposal to Hamas. The parameters that have been publicized in the media regarding the length of the pause in the fighting. It's the IDF's territorial repositioning during that process. It's the change in the humanitarian situation to allow movement of people from south to north at their demand, and the number of prisoners that will be given to them at each stage. What we know about is three stages. The first is a humanitarian stage, then the hostages, and then the third is the hostages, the prisoners. There's a Hamas delegation in Egypt, and it hasn't left, contrary to what they said in the media. And there is a lot of pressure on Hamas to come up with a counter proposal, and then this could be advanced and a position can be taken. But if this hasn't been done, there's a lot of information and disinformation out there, and all kinds of manipulations done by all kinds of parties. And this will be my last question on Gaza. You have the issue of humanitarian support the Americans and the enlightened part of the world is pushing that direction. Much of the world is losing their passions. Speaking of what was said to Benny Gantz in Washington, there's a program that the Prime Minister apparently is not accepting. How do we, it's the fact that there are old men and women, there are hostages that are there living under inhuman conditions. After that, you have our commitment to provide aid and help to populations of hundreds of thousands of children, women, old people, and sick people, all within that area that Hamas was in control of, that Hamas did that horrible thing. And here we have that basic duty of ours to provide according to international law and according to our own values. We would not want to cause 2 million people to go hungry, particularly not old people, sick people, and children. The second thing is freedom of maneuver. Without a constant humanitarian solution that is stable for the Gaza Strip, the state of Israel will not be able to fulfill the goals of its war. Our best friends are saying this to us, and the United States that really has enlisted and used its in the special relationship between the two countries in setting up a rapid force and providing weapons as well as garnering international support. Therefore, a constant humanitarian aid effort is a vital need that the State of Israel must fulfill. Let's go on to the north now. Nobody wants, who knows what Nasrallah wants? Nobody wants a war really to happen there, but in any case, people can't be living in the north right now. The head of Mate Asher Regional Council said that they were abandoned and that they're still abandoned. Hezbollah, it doesn't look like it's going to retreat beyond the Litani River. That's the way. How is all this going to end up? Look, clearly we were dragged into a strategic, complicated situation that was unimaginable, where the weakest enemy in the Middle East surprised the State of Israel, and the IDF was dealt the heaviest blow that the State of Israel has ever endured. The decision was the main effort in the Gaza Strip and the minor effort in the north. Hezbollah used that opportunity. There are Iranians that are managing the back, and it's a much broader campaign than just Hamas, Hezbollah, and Israel, because you also have Iran and their proxies. And this is where this pretty serious battle was imposed on us with complex decisions. Ultimately, the right decision was made with pretty serious price tags. But it's very clear that the campaign in the north must end with one of two things. The first possibility is that the overall losses of the Hezbollah will lead them to accept the fulfillment of 1701, which could not have been fulfilled because of the size of the military achievement and the policy that we had over the years. That's arguable, that we can argue over, and what's happened over the past few months. You can't ignore the fact that tens of thousands or nearly 100,000 Israelis have been evacuated from their towns, and those towns have now become ghost towns. Hezbollah began this attack. Of course, it's paying a very heavy price, and Nasrallah knows us well enough to know that what happens in the south will have a major effect on what happens in the north. I knew this as the head of the operations directorate in 2006. There too, we were surprised, and 3 soldiers were abducted, Goldwasser and Regev, but ultimately there were very serious attacks in Lebanon, including the destruction of the centers of gravity of Hezbollah in Lebanon, in the Beirut Dahya, in Baalbek, tunnels that penetrate into Metula, Shlomi, and elsewhere. And their intention was, which had been going on for over a decade, was to penetrate into the Galilee. We saw this in time, and we thwarted it. I imagine that what happened in the south, including plus everything that was done, pushes back this threat. But there has to be clearly a major change in our security conception and in our concept of operations for our forces to bring our residents back to the north. And if we have no other choice, we'll have to use force, but we have to employ it wisely, powerfully, and at the time that we decide to do so. Okay, since I'm getting signals from the back and I'm skipping over the Palestinian issue that I want to talk about with you, let's talk about the dividing the burden. It's a pretty small army that we have that's barely meeting its goals. They reduced the size of the army under the header of the smart and small army. As the chief of staff, they reduced the conscription term, and now the chief of staff is saying that everybody needs back. This is really infuriating. It's infuriating that the ultra-Orthodox don't do reserves. They get coalitionary funds that the government is continuing to give them, the government that you're in. And they don't even go and pick apples near the Gaza Strip. Everybody needs to be enlisted. And your proposal of the national camp says that everybody's going to go to civilian service, but not everybody's going to get into the army. You're also allowing the ultra-Orthodox to avoid enlisting. Why? You raised many different topics. I suggested starting with the right way to learn about what happened and to draw the right conclusions. There are people in the audience who remember what happened after the trauma of Yom Kippur. It was corrected a decade later, which was what we call the lost decade. We have to be able to reach the right conclusions and not to follow populistic statements. The IDF is a big army. The IDF is an army of between 500,000 and 1 million soldiers during emergencies. It's closer to 1 million. Whoever thought that it's a small order of battle, tell me. Today's order of battle in the IDF is bigger than the order of battle during the Yom Kippur War, to double that. And the IDF now has abilities, and our founding fathers built, not just for the IDF, they built the State of Israel an ability that makes the State of Israel a very strong country. And I'm telling you that as a modest and skeptical person, even though, despite the major blow that we were dealt in October. And now we have to make sure that we're doing the right things and strengthening the IDF. And unlike the myths and legends, and the fact that people say these things over and over, it doesn't make them right. I didn't see to get rid of and one tank. We built 2 brigades. We built another 6 regular battalions, and we did force buildup. During my term, I agreed to reduce the term of conscription, and there was a positive view of this 4-month reduction in the conscription service. This was the desire of Prime Minister Netanyahu through the Locker Committee to reduce that service period to 2 years. In other words, to reduce it by 1 year. And we had no choice when we wanted to pass a multi-year plan. We didn't agree to shorten it by 1 year, as the committee had demanded, along with Prime Minister Netanyahu. We agreed to a shortening of 4 months, provided that we get a security net through regular army officers. And we got an amount of regular army officers that's the same amount of those people. So we came out with a larger army than what we had after that cut. And I suggest that we don't rush to solutions, easy solutions but rather to extend their period, but how to look at how to properly build the IDF for the next 30 years. On the 7th of October, something happened. That has to be a seminal event for the State of Israel. Today, 67% of the people who can recruit enlist, unfortunately 33 drop out. In other words, out of every 100 people, that enlist, only 53 end up completing their service. And this has an effect on our reserves. The right thing to do is to advance what we had proposed, the Israeli service law that requires every young person in this country, including Arabs and ultra-Orthodox, to do a preliminary military service, civilian service, and social service with a definition of quotas and sanctions against anybody who dodges this. I would like to see the heads of the ultra-Orthodox society understanding how important this is and to lead this, because it's impossible that the top commander of the IDF, which is the government of Israel, sends out the IDF to complete its missions, and many of the ministers that send the IDF to do their missions and decide whether to bring back hostages or not are going to be part of this. Has to come together. This has to be done together. So therefore, there's a historic opportunity here. And I'm not talking about the 4,500 who are studying Torah. As you know, in every cohort, there are 12,500 ultra-Orthodox aged 18. Up to 4,700 study Torah, and I respect those Torah learners. The other 7,000 need to enlist in the IDF, and the ones who should be leading this are the heads of the yeshivas. Otherwise, we end up with a culture that we see, a very bad culture, and we can't talk here about mutual assistance or cohesion in Israeli society without making that change. And we in the national camp are determined to pass this law and to bring to a very extensive enlistment of those who do not study Torah. That would be great. Now we're in the last chapter of our conversation, a little bit of pure politics. Benny Gantz and you in the condensed cabinet, the war cabinet, tell us what's happening inside there. Yes, of course. Does this cabinet make decisions? Is it in control? As a citizen observing from the side, it doesn't look like such a big thing, because it looks like there was a document that was leaked because that was the only way that people would listen to you. Am I wrong? It's not. In light of this question, the supplementary question that's required here is that the citizens of the state of Israel, particularly those who voted for your party, are asking themselves, what are your red lines, and what are your red lines, Minister Eisenkot? When would you say this? And this is enough for me, and leave and when will you leave the government? I apparently made your life tough when I was division commander. I had to ask for Tamir, who was the commander of a different tank brigade. So basically, to answer your question, on the 7th of October, I planned to take a walk, and I heard the siren. I stayed at home, and then I saw what shocked everybody, to see vans with machine guns in the fields. And I very quickly had a conversation with Benny Gantz, and we, like the tankers that run forward without asking questions, that we were going to join this emergency government, because this was going to be a tough, long war. It was clear to us, and that's when we joined this cabinet. I want to tell you that, in general, that this reduced cabinet is operating professionally, and there are quite a few disagreements that occur inside there, but the decisions are professional decisions. I can tell you, regarding the document that I disseminated a document to the members of the cabinet. It was the fifth in a series that every 2 weeks. It's an accepted practice. Other ministers also distributed 2 or 3 documents to the members of the cabinet. Unfortunately, this document was leaked. What this document was meant to say is to extend the achievement or the assessment of the achievements of the war, to define the gaps that I've identified, and the steps that are right to take in order to achieve a victory. It's a very professional document. It's not meant for the media, and it wasn't meant for Israeli citizens. Unfortunately, it was leaked. I don't know when. But the bottom line is that there is a major challenge that we're still facing in the south, bringing back the hostages and completing the war with our coming out on the upper hand in order to change the reality in the Gaza Strip, to complete in the right way and with an Israeli advantage to stop the very problematic situation in Lebanon, to prevent an intifada in Judea and Samaria. And in the past few weeks, we've taken action to make the right decision. Since the first decisions were leaked 2 weeks ago, the right decision was ultimately made. But that doesn't mean anything, and I'm saying this as somebody who commanded Judea and Samaria. This is a huge challenge. The population there goes to work. There's the mechanisms. Our security agencies have raised a flag, and there's still a major challenge there. Above that, you have the Iranian challenge that's unfortunately continuing to make progress, and the Iranians are the big winners of what has happened in the past 5 months. They feel like uninterrupted. The biggest enemy paid a major price because of its smallest enemy, without its proxy paying a major price. So therefore, we are in this emergency government based on a sense of responsibility, and not because we want to hold on to a chair or something like that. And they were much more influential than what they say in the media. Believe me, if I were to believe that we are not influential, I wouldn't stay one more minute in the government with Benny Gantz. Since I do feel that we are having an influence, we are there and we are contributing. We're not doing this for any other reason, and I won't go into the details of what was done there. I can only tell you that unlike the broad cabinet, one of the members of the broad cabinet calls the reduced cabinet the little cabinet. So the second cabinet, the leaking cabinet, I would recommend that it not be the place where the decisions are made, decisions that are tied to the lives of each and every one of us. And every effort needs to be made to preserve this situation, as provided that the state of Israel's national interests are advanced, and not somebody's personal interests. And my last question before they kick us out with our chairs, Gadi, and this is a personal question and it's a tough question. You know very well that a lot of people are very sympathetic towards you here in this country. Many see in you the person who we need, an authentic, brave, courageous person who's. When will be the day that it's your time to take that major step and for you to say, I'm taking the helm? Look, I joined a party that Benny Gantz established as a partner to our common path. We've had a friendship that's gone back for years, and we have a level of trust that's absolute. And when I joined him, I understood very well that he is the one who's leading the party. He has a lot of trust today in Israeli society. Not that I'm getting my information from surveys, but I'm seeing this, and this is part of it. He's got a lot of appreciation, and he has the admiration of world leaders, and there's no reason for me to want to do this. I would just want to push forward, make sure that he is the alternative to the Prime Minister, so that we could have a Zionist, democratic, responsible government to advance the state of Israel out of the distress and out of the major challenge that we've started dealing with several months ago. So what I heard and what I understood is that yes, but not yet. So thank you to Minister and former Chief of Staff of the IDF, Gadi Eisenkot. There you go.